Excellent.
Step back into the studio.
Brilliant, brilliant video coming through, crystal clear audio.
Isn't that great?
Great, great background. Everything.
You're a technical genius.
No, sir. I just fiddle for 30 years and eventually figure it out.
Have you got Janet Pate joined you guys there?
Yes, we recruited her. We're very fortunate.
Now, what role is she?
She is, we're streaming live, just so you know.
Yeah. Yep.
She is Vice President of Financial Development.
Sensational. No, she's a great mate. I was going to send her a note to come and listen to us.
Well, she's indicated that she may be dropping in this evening.
Ah, sensational.
Yeah. So let me see. There's only one shot. If you want to fire up you can see on the YouTube page what's going out right now live. If you have a second screen or a split screen or something like that.
Yeah, I'll plug that in. Won't be a tick.
Whoops.
That's what we call user error.
Well, that's quite okay. It's all good. I have one shot that I can't seem to correct, and I'm a little leery of stopping the stream and trying to correct it. So I think we will just work around that shot. Now there is, if you're watching YouTube or if you're watching the live at yexchange.tv/live, and then start the video button when the YouTube video is there. You'll see it looks like it's about a 60-second delay, but it is live, it is streaming, so it is merely going around the planet.
Sensational. No, I'm not. Look, I won't look at that. I believe you. That's too confusing for me. That's multitasking. I'm turning the screen off.
Okay, that's fine. That's just as well. And well, and
I'll get distracted. I'll start putting pirate hats on or something. You know me.
I'm hoping for that, Peter. Well, if
I forgot how that was a one-off.
well, if you saw the short clip of last week's conversation, you probably got a sense of how it looks.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's great.
if we can get a little more headroom on your camera, a little more headroom, so tilt it up a little bit. Not so much, not so much.
Yeah. I'll adjust I've got an old Y book here, a great YM bloke. So I'll just open a couple of pages.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
I'm leaning the camera on it. So
Oh,
how's that doing?
that's pretty good. We could do a little bit more.
A little more angle up.
A little more. No, a little more down now. Too far up.
Yep. That's why a book's good. It's got pages.
There you go. Okay, sit
The new
back.
use books.
That's brilliant right there. Right there is
No,
great.
wow.
If you're sitting right like that, lean a little bit back and let me see what it looks like. Yeah, you're still good there. Lean a little bit forward, and you're good right there. If you want to get up close, it still doesn't cut off your. It doesn't cut off your head. So we are at, boy, I sure wish, I don't know what's going on with that one shot, but oh well, we'll live without it. We're streaming live. This is pre-show Triangulation cause-driven conversations with Mr. Peter Burns, Chief Executive Officer of YMCA Victoria in Australia. This is being live streamed simultaneously on 2 days. 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, April 24th on Thursday, and 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time in North America on Wednesday, the 23rd. I don't think we could have created a more complicated scenario.
We always thought that North Americans were a day behind. So there we go.
We're a little slow on the uptake. So this is going to be fine. I've got a couple of different switches between me and you, and we'll just live with that. There's always some first-time shakeouts, but I'm at least thrilled that the YouTube piece is doing its job. I've also got over to my right over there. I can barely see it, but I've got another machine with the chat room open, and last week we talked about an opening introduction, a professional background opening introduction, and a closing personal background closing, and
Sure.
and then so that's kind of the bread pieces of the sandwich. And then we talked about a couple of topics. I've got a couple more, and you said that you had a couple of things that you had on your mind as well. But what I didn't think about is if there's anybody actually watching this live in the chat room, they may want to have an opportunity to ask a question. Would you be willing to entertain a question from any of the folks there?
Anyone I don't know, I'm happily answer because if they know me, they probably know I'm fabricating things.
Well,
Absolutely.
I'll just keep my eye out there, and the good news is we can screen all the questions that we choose to put out on air. And so what I will do with this pre-show material is there'll be a raw version of this show, and so the raw version will include our little chit-chat here and our pilot error and all that kind of stuff. And then the official one, I'll put a simple intro in there, usually trying to tease out something that's deeper in the conversation so that we encourage people to watch and find out. So more than likely, I'll tease out something with your personal background that you're not revealing until the end of the video. It's a technique, right? So
yeah, go for it.
And we'll go for as long as you wish. That we cannot. I'm sorry to disappoint you, maybe, but we cannot go longer than 8 hours.
I'm thinking 8 minutes about my entire career.
And so we'll go at if we're running out of material at 40 minutes or 45 minutes, there's no drop dead time as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
So you just take it and as you're comfortable. You know, the beauty of this, Peter, really is it's just like you were saying last week. It's a conversation between you and me. It makes it very easy. And I guess I've got 7:01 here, Mountain Daylight Time, so it's probably 11:01, and it's probably time to get started. You ready?
Let's go.
All right. I'm going to just do some video switching here. You won't see it, but the live audience folks will. Hello and welcome to Triangulation, Cause-Driven Conversations. Our guest today is Mr. Peter Burns, Chief Executive Officer of YMCA Victoria in Australia. This is being live streamed via YouTube, and it will also be made available recorded version on YouTube, so that if you're not awake right now, or if you're busy right now, or if you're many of those folks that we invited that just said we've got other commitments, you'll be able to watch that then at yexchange.tv/live right now, and it'll be yexchange.tv on the YouTube channel, which is simply youtube.com/yexchangetv. My name is Jeff Bundy. I'm at the YMCA Boulder Valley in the United States, and let's get started. We've got a very casual conversation. It's cause-driven, so we're going to focus this around YMCA, the concept of spirit, mind, and body, and we're going to find out a little bit more. Many of you probably already know Mr. Burns, or Peter, as we're calling each other here on a first-name basis, but many of you, perhaps some of those folks in their 20s or in their late teens, might not have heard of Peter Burns, so this is an opportunity to meet him. We also have a chat. If you go to yexchange.tv/live, there's an open and active chat there, and you'll have an opportunity, if you so choose, to not only connect with others, but also ask Peter a question if you want, if we have time at the end. Well, Peter, welcome.
Thanks, Jeff. It's great to experiment with you.
Well, thank you for being here. We had a little bit of an agenda that we put together, but really it's going to be just an informal conversation. And I've got a couple of things already, a couple of questions in my mind based on some of the material that I was able to get from your website that actually the folks can see almost entirely right behind you because you have a poster there. victoria.ymca.org.au is where you can find that information. But why don't you just start out with a little bit of your professional background? I know that you've been in the Y very close to 30 or in excess of 30 years, something like that?
Yes, Jeff, I'm a lifer. I was a white brat way back when, running around the basement and the lift wells of the YMCA in Melbourne here in Victoria. My father worked for the Y for 29 years, wow, and I'm racking up about 34, 35 at the moment. So it's a lifetime calling in many ways, and just been a wonderful, wonderful experience in these past 30 years. My background is I went and trained as a phys ed teacher, and then did postgraduate work in distance education. So I've always been interested in physical activity, outdoor recreation, working with young people, and my entire teenage time was spent volunteering with the Y. So it's a marvellous, marvellous place to be,
Well,
and it still excites me.
really, what about it in particular? And then I want to go a little bit deeper into your sort of your path up the chain that led you to your current position.
Sure. I think the thing for me with the alignment of belief and values, we're blessed. We work with an organisation, part of a movement that does good stuff, and it's pretty hard to argue anything else. And every day there's something new. In our Y, at least, and the Ys I've witnessed around the world, if you've got an idea, you can pretty much pursue it and bring about good work in your community. And that's one of the things I've been blessed with. Out of unfortunate circumstances here in Melbourne in 1978, when the Y was bankrupt, we've re-emerged, and I feel like a surfer in the Australian tradition. I've been riding a wave ever since. I jumped on board in the late 70s, early 80s, and I was never going to work for the Y, and because I'd seen how it declined in my childhood. And I fell in love all over again, and it's just been wonderful. And now we're arguably one of the most comprehensive and largest on several measures, not some others that Ys in the world. And it's a great place to be, and something that we can all feel very comfortable that we're contributing to the quality of life here in Victoria.
Wow, that is a fascinating bit of news that I did not get from reading the material there, that the Y in YMCA Victoria was bankrupt in the late 70s. So tell me a little bit about your predecessors and how did it happen that how do you go from bankruptcy to where you are today?
Yeah, so there's some social change that occurred leading up to the bankruptcy. It was called the 1960s.
I remember.
And things changed. And now, of course, there were some other mitigating of circumstances as well. A belief in buildings and not the mission work, if you like, and clinging too long to buildings that were long past their due date, and other impediments that were created at the time. So it was a clash of old style with changing cultures. The re-emergence really came through a gentleman a lot of people around the world would know, Bob Nicholson, who's now retired. Bob's a big personality, a fantastic leader, and I was fortunate to be asked by Bob to join him on the journey. So we've worked in excess of 30 years together in various forms, and really we reinvented what it meant to be the YMCA, and it's probably easier to articulate it today than it was back then. I think we were just desperate back then, but looking back we can join the dots, and we were creating a new way of operating, partnering with local government, using other people's capital and buildings to do the mission cause work of the Y, and that's bringing about changes in people, body, mind and spirit. It's about empowering local people to do local things and just affecting change one person at a time. These days we've gone from being bankrupt way back then to close to a $200 million turnover today as we speak, 7,000 staff, 165 different locations. Our definitions of things are a little different to how you might think of it in North America, but by on any measure, we are we've created from Phoenix-like a modern and vibrant charitable organisation that meets significant needs in our community.
So that you touched on the number, and you updated that number, The number on the site said 150. It referenced something about 6 sites
Yep.
in 1984 to 150, and now you've said 165. And you indicated that maybe some of those are counted a little bit differently than we would traditionally think of a full facility brick and mortar complex.
Yep.
Describe some of the diversity that you have in those 165 sites. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, look, for you, it might be day camp, out of school hours care, before and after school locations. We have dedicated childcare facilities that are from age 0 to age 6. We have Ys that are nearly full service Ys operating inside juvenile prisons.
No.
Swimming pools, gyms, visits by the local private girls' school to to acclimatise the boys to intergender communications in appropriate ways, playing volleyball. We have a student accommodation facility that houses two facilities that house 2,500 international students here in Melbourne. So there's a mix of traditional and non-traditional. Of course, there's our youth work centres, including standalone skate parks, campsites. So there's a lot of different activity that we do, and differing. Probably one of the ones that would be interesting to anyone viewing would be the acquisition of a completely separately branded swim school chain 2 years ago that we've chosen to keep operating under the previous branding. Having learned from our friends in South Korea and other YMCAs around the world, we are actively pursuing a house of brands approach that meets the client or the person we're reaching out to where they're at, and doesn't necessarily impose on them the fact that we're a YMCA up front. That comes a little later.
Wow. Wow, that's just that's all I could say is wow. You touched on a point that really hits home with me, and you said 2,500 international students.
Yeah. So we have a lot of North Americans. We have a lot from Asia, particular China these days, coming to attend the premium university. Melbourne University is one of the premium universities in Australia. Proximity and time zone suits Asia, the quality of the education, and we've partnered with a private developer who on-sold to private owners. And in our circumstance, what we do is we're a real estate agent. We lease the building. We have a full-time psychologist on site looking after the personal needs of these students. So it's a genuine home away from home, a vertical village, if you like. 2,500 people, that's bigger than many country towns in Victoria.
Oh yeah.
And it's a genuine community and extremely diverse. You can imagine a 16-year-old North American turning up here, living next door to a PhD candidate that's 29, and the North American discovers that you can get away with buying alcohol here at 18, and at 16 you look like you're 18. And that's but there are all sorts of other complications in with a community of young people, as you can imagine.
Well, that's fascinating. I want to highlight the fact that you mentioned it was Bob Nicholson, you said?
Correct, and I think you have met Bob way back when.
I think I probably have way back when. Yes, exactly. And that's kind of a little bit about what you're doing here on this exchange of conversation is you had a mentor back then when, 30 years ago or more than 30 years ago when you got started.
I'm only 28 as well. I'm only 28 years old.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's really that's part of what when you and I talked to pre-show last week, we talked about that, and that's part of what we want to do is let the youth know that what's possible out there. And you've just created in a few minutes a scenario of bankruptcy to flourishing in an entirely different mindset, a completely different approach that you've taken with partnering, with leasing, with getting into real estate, with this how did you call it? This house of brands. That's also fascinating. And so the why of your grandfather is not the why today. And
but what we do is the same stuff in a contemporary context.
yep.
Yeah, we're about youth empowerment. We're about leadership development. We're about, you and I fiddling around with this medium with the full intent of handing it over to young people and say, what do you reckon? How can you make this something that we can't have even imagine? And that's incredibly important to me, and I know it is to you too. It's about ensuring our legacy is generous and open and forward-looking. And whatever we do, we're creating that space. I love Johann Wilhelm Eltvik's piece coming out of the World Council about space and transformation and impact. And it's relating particularly to young people, but I think it applies to all of us. If we create the space for people to excel, to learn, to experiment, they will undertake a transformation and have an impact we couldn't even dream of, particularly if they do it together in that most traditional of YMCA ways through group work. And it continually excites me. You can probably feel it down the line.
Well, exactly. And tell me just a little bit about, so if I'm a young staffer right now, I've got an entry-level position. I'm probably some kind of program director at a minimum, or in your case, it could even be, an entry-level administrative person at some level. And you obviously didn't drop in and parachute in as CEO. You worked your way up. And so describe just briefly sort of your career path in thinking that there's some 18, 19-year-old or 20 people in their 20s listening to this, either live or recorded, and they're going to say, well, yeah, it's easy for him to say that because he's at the top. But you weren't always at the top. How did you get started, and what were your progressions, and why did you stick with it as long as you've stuck with it?
Sure. I think the simple answer is always answer yes. And yeah, sure. So I'm up for that. And I recall very early on I was studying as an undergraduate, and a friend asked, will you cover for me at the Y? And I had been working casually at another Y and doing things, you would call it day camp, holiday programs, we called it back then. And I was asked to supervise a BMX track for one Friday evening. And I went over and I spoke to the then General Secretary of the local Y, and they said, well, we called it aerobics back then. Jane Fonda was around.
Oh, right.
You would remember her. So we were doing aerobics, not group fitness.
Right.
And the gentleman that had been doing it said to me, look, will you phys ed, you can come and do my exercise class, please. And I said, fine, no worries. And he said, okay, start Monday. And I said, well, look, why don't I watch you the first time, and then I'll start the next week, just to see what you do. I sat there and I wrote everything he did down, and I did that exact same class for the next 10 weeks while I figured out how to be an aerobics instructor. And in the end, we had a ball. You had 300 people in a basketball stadium. It was one of those times that it won't be the same again because risk and all those sort of things. But we were doing all sorts of things and experimenting, and it was great fun. I was asked to become full time, and I said no. I need to finish my study. And Bob Nicholson said, okay, we'll keep a place open for next year. I want you. And that belief Bob let me make so many mistakes, uh, mistakes I never made again. Some of them costly, but he knew it was an investment and in someone he believed in, and that for me is crucial. That believe in people, and I start believing in people, and you've got to work really hard to shake my belief in you as an individual. So we did that, and as we went along, we were up for anything that seemed like it was traditional Y. Someone said to us, "Do you run in swimming pools?" And we said, "Sure, we run swimming pools." "Do you run student accommodation?" "Sure, we run student accommodation." "Do you run Ys inside prisons?" "Sure, we do." We didn't do any of those things, but we knew we could. And we learned along the way, and I think having the confidence to say, well, this will apply, and we said no to just as many things, even probably a lot more things we said no to, and certainly today we're very clear about what we say yes and no to, but largely if you're clear about why you're there, about our cause,
Yeah.
it's very easy to say yes and it's very easy to say no. And the other rule for me, and that it's probably been learnt more with the travel of time, is only work with people that believe in what you believe in. It's very difficult. So if you find yourself as an entry-level staff person and it's not aligning, it's not working for you, there are other options. Don't be frightened. Move to the other options. Create your own future, and you'll be better for it. And you'll find a cause. And if it's ours, fantastic. If it's not, you'll find a cause that aligns with you. And it might be temporary. It might be for life. And one of the things I battle with, Jeff, is to say to people, it's okay to have 3 years with us. If we're part of your development journey, that's magnificent, because we'll never leave your heart, even though you might leave the employ of the Y.
Yep.
And we just had a young person who was on our youth parliament 25 years ago, Youth in Government program, and he's come back and joined my board. He's an exceptional leader, and his most recent role was be the chief advisor to the Prime Minister of our nation.
Wow.
The equivalent of your president in America, USA. So you never quite leave the Y, and there's a time in your life perhaps where you rekindle that relationship.
That is a fantastic message, and if I were 18 or in my 20s and listening to that, there's a plug for youth government that this service, this experience, this opportunity that's available at YMCAs around the world could lead you to be in service of your prime minister or whoever is your head of state in the country that you live in, and never give up on that. That's amazing. So that is a great story. It doesn't necessarily happen right away, but 25 years ago, the Y was investing in that person, and that person sort of, I guess you would say, paid it forward. It took 25 years, but wait a minute. I think we were founded in 1844, so I don't think we're going away anytime soon, right?
Absolutely. And that's the message. It come and go. And I think if we remain generous of heart, generosity begets generosity, and belief in people, and belief in an investment now paying off somewhere, sometime. It's really nice when it comes back and we can notice it. But I know another young man that volunteered directly with me 30 years ago, and he's moved to North America. He lives in Nova Scotia, I think, in Canada, and he has been on an entirely different career path and just joined the YMCA as a staff member in Halifax, I think it is. And it's fantastic to hear those stories. It's equally fantastic to know there's hundreds and thousands of those stories that we never become aware of.
Well, and that's one of the things I know, again, that you and I talked about, and that's the entire mission here at Y Exchange TV is to capture those stories. We don't have to make them up. They're already out there. And then simply amplify those stories. And we can do that here. You're in Melbourne, Australia, or at least somewhere near Melbourne right now, right?
Yes.
and, and I'm sitting here in Boulder, Colorado, in North America. We sent out invitations. We had people from Texas. We had people from New York City. We had people. We had a gentleman that you and I both know, Norris Lineweaver from Ontario, Canada. He's up probably listening to this on his iPad out on his porch or something, hopefully. But we've had
Norris.
We had people. There you go. We had people all over say that some of them will be able to make it, some of them won't, and it's okay if they can't because they can still hear your message down the road. And this is just the beginning of thousands of these kinds of stories. And again, I want to thank you. We're not done at all, but I just want to stop and take a moment to say it's not hard, people. You get in front of the camera, and does it hurt, Peter? Does the camera hurt?
I'm sweating drops of blood here, Jeff. I'm terrified. I'm having a conversation with you, mate, and I'd encourage people to give this a go. I'm interested in stories, and I think the why is so much better for sharing our stories, and trusting someone like you to take this and build a platform and join you in the experiment, as I said right up front, is it's an honour to even be considered to talk to you, and as I've been really clear in our pre-conversations and here, if we can inspire our young people to grab hold of this,
yep.
The Global Million Voices campaign will become 20 million voices, and the efforts of individuals will be replicated. We were talking a little before about Jan Pate has just moved to a role at the YMCA you're with. And Jan, if you're there, thank you for changing the course of this YMCA almost 2 decades ago, and you're only 27 years old. So how does that work? But we, the beneficiary of a YMCA of USA program, which saw us host a young woman for a year here, and from her being here on an internship, a program that's come and gone, but the principles hold the same. By exchanging competence and being generous with learning opportunities, we have an enduring volunteer program that runs a mass of holiday activities and programs, camps for children, particularly children with high needs.
Yep.
And it's an enduring legacy that comes from the happenstance of people connecting. And I see us connecting on Y Exchange TV as you say, amplifying the happenstance of connecting, sharing a story that may stimulate some creativity.
Exactly, and Jan is with us here, at least. She is in the chat room, and she did make a comment earlier on that she says she knows that Peter is a fabricator. That was a...
I'm worried about people like Jan and Norris and others listening, because the truth will come out in the chat room.
So, and I see we do have one of the guests from New York City as well, also online. I'll just give a shout out to John Atwater. Thank you, John, for popping into the chat. Please feel free to ask a question if you want, and we'll just hang on to that question until the appropriate time. Peter, I know I had a topic that we talked about a little bit, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to maybe go off script a little bit, and you had given some thought to what we were going to talk about tonight as well. And I know you probably have a couple of burning topics that you'd like to expound on. What do you think?
Yeah, I've always got an opinion. No, it's fascinating. In thinking about those things that uh, provide me with passion at this point,
Absolutely.
I'm just uh, completely enamored with the movement coming together globally just now. And I've had the gift of involvement with the World Urban Network, a
Yes.
network of CEOs from around the globe, and to me, it has rekindled a whole lot of involvement with the wire that might have otherwise slipped off 10 or 12 years ago. And for me, the stimulation of meeting with peers and connecting with people, real people, and stealing their ideas is just a wonderful thing. And so bouncing off each other, and for me at the moment, and there are a couple of projects going with the World Urban Network, but in addition to that, there's the notions that are emerging and the possibilities emerging with crowdfunding in the YMCA, with social capital investment, with shared value investing, all reasonably non-traditional ways for Ys to think about. It's interesting, I go back to when we first started working with local government, and the observation at the time was, it's nice that you're partnering with government, but when are you going to build a real YMCA? And feeling very indignant and saying, well, no, this is a real YMCA for today. The multi-purpose downtown swim and gym and accommodation Y, that was a really cutting edge innovation in the 30s. Yeah, 1930s.
Right.
So right now, our Y works with a very low capital base. Now, we want to build that and balance it out, but we don't have much capital behind us. And so my efforts now is to say, well, how can we build a sustainable base, a base from which we can be self-determining over the next 50 or 60 years, rather than at the whim of government policy change or the change of people across the years, and even donor profiles change over time. So it's a really interesting time to be innovative with the Y and look at all these brilliant things that are going on around in the not-for-profit world and say, well, where do we sit? What can we capitalise on? What's our focus area that can really make a difference? And for us, it's going to stem around young people. It's going to stem around, I think you call it social responsibility. Those sorts of things are just so important to us. And physical activity. Physical activity, if it were invented today, would be the panacea for health. And it's reimagining physical activity other than in gym memberships is, I think, one of the challenges on the horizon for us just now. So that pushes my buttons, and our people and culture and people touching, connecting together. It was so difficult to walk into the office 25, 30 years ago at YVUSA and pretend I was brave and connect with people and say, hey, I'm from Australia. Now it's normal, and just look at NATO. There's Mexico there. Everyone's welcome from around the globe, and people turning up. And the welcoming culture of the Y family and the willingness to share is just astounding. And the rate at which we share now, with social media and the rest, is just exponential, and none of us can keep up. So we have to trust each other to be helping and pursuing different fields, of which I think this platform is one of the most promising. There are a lot of other experiments around the globe at the moment with the Y on connecting people. Let's make use of them. And to be honest, Jeff, let's look to South America. That they're probably doing it better than any of us just now. It just happens to be a Spanish, a language that I don't speak.
Right.
So I'm always looking to be stimulated.
Right. That's interesting. What have you heard about South America?
From my exposure to people in the World Urban Network, my colleagues, my peers, they're making huge use of the Google platform and all the Skypes and those. The uptake is very much more flexible, fluid, willing to experiment. Frankly, people my age and above are pretty stuck to the telephone. And it's a hugely expensive way of doing it. Emails, a breakthrough. Well, come on, folks, we need to be pushed out of those comfort zones. And here we are. I'm getting encouraged by my staff here to, always to get involved in this sort of place. And it's symbolic. If a chief executive can take this on, if we can show this sort of stuff to our staff and volunteers, and say, hey, if that old bloke can do it, surely we can do it better. That's what we're looking for.
So what I hear you saying also is that it's really a two-way exchange from both bookends of the staff and volunteers. So it's the youth have, I guess I could say, almost an obligation to mentor and teach those that are not the youth, and those that are not the youth have an obligation to explain and teach. So it's a cross-cultural, cross-age demographic, if you will, opportunity and again, I'm using sort of a strong word in an obligation, but we shouldn't be thinking that the older generation knows it all. As you mentioned, the telephone, if it stops at the telephone, that's pretty limiting. And conversely, we shouldn't think that if there's some young person that they probably don't have enough experience. It seems to me from where I spent a few years living in Silicon Valley that most of the great ideas come from young people, and the younger they are, it seems the greater the idea. So I think that's brilliant. Do you think the youth aspect has anything to do with that uptake in Central and South America?
I'm certain it does. I'm certain it does, and youthful outlook. So I think you can. It's a hackneyed expression, but being young at heart with a youthful outlook can compensate in some ways for not being young. It doesn't, and just out of convenience, handing things to young people just because they're young is just terrible, shocking. We need a cause association that unites us. We need to meet each other every time as if it's the first time we've met, and really, really connect, and then we can create a deep belief in each other and work with each other. And in so many ways, young people, if they can open up and connect and encourage the people in power, if you like, and it's not necessarily just age, but those with us with the hands on the levers of resources, we need to hand over control of the ship to those young people that believe in the stuff that we believe, and as an act of faith, know that they will move forward in the right ways for the good of the movement, the good of our cause. And I don't care if I don't agree with what's happening, as long as it's for good reasons.
Right, exactly, and that gets back to you're able to say yes, but you're also able to recognize and say no when saying no is also necessary, because you're cause-driven, cause-based. It makes it much easier to determine what's in the cause, what's for the cause, what's going to advance the cause, and what is not part of the cause, what would dilute the cause, what would distract from the cause, what would prevent and perhaps cause the cause to stumble, if you will.
Absolutely.
There's one thing that you also said, and I caught it. It was almost parenthetical, but I'm interested to get sort of your board of directors' opinion of sort of the various professions that they're in. You made mention that around this global coming together that really excites you, and it excites a lot of us, obviously. But you said 50 to 60 years out. 50, you just rolled that off the tip of your tongue like nothing. And I don't know about your board, but most boards, the people on the boards, the volunteers on the boards in their businesses are not thinking 50 or 60 years out. And I don't know if that's different, but how does your board deal with that sort of the longer view and for the why, and their sort of short view that's maybe driven by their stock exchange indexes and whatnot? Vastly different.
It is. It's a dualism that we live with. I think there are some cultural differences with our boards here to those that you're probably more familiar with, certainly in the North American context. From our view, there's an abiding understanding that we are temporary custodians, each of us, and that we, if anything, we lean just to the more conservative side of conservative economics and long-term investment. Personally, I felt, and until just 2 or 3 months ago, one of my board members was around when the Y went broke in '78. He's been long-serving, amazing, different roles, but the corporate memory, if you like, is long. And for me, an overarching motivation has been to ensure that we never hurt people by going broke again. And so our decisions are unashamedly cause-focused, mission-focused, on a strong foundation of good economics and great business acumen. So if we can't get it donated, we hire the business acumen to check, recheck, and check again what we're doing with the long-term view in mind. And there's no easy answer. It really is about saying, hey, are we investing now for example, for the safety of our children and for the quality of the customer experience in a gym or a campsite? And what are we investing for the long-term legacy, what we leave there as a something to draw on in times of rainy days? And so we're gradually building a corpus, if you like, that we can rely on into the future. I'm not sure we'll have it done by the time I can, in my career time, but it's a long-term view that we take into account in every decision we make. How can we ensure that this is setting down some path of custodianship that's understandable to those that come later, and not locking people into the future either. It's their responsibility when they are here. I think I haven't experienced in this board, but I've heard of other non-Y boards that have tried to lock in a future 5, 10, 20 years out and then walk away. And I think that's bordering on obscene. How dare you think you can do that?
Right.
It's up to the people of that time.
Right. So it's almost like the 1978 incident is for the YMCA Victoria. And probably I'm getting the sense that that's the YMCA Victoria is the whole state of Victoria, right?
Yeah, the name is a little bit of a misnomer. It's probably too complicated to go through, but there was a time in this nation that we had state associations to which local associations belonged, and then a national, so a dual federation. 10 or 12 years ago, we eliminated the dualism and have just got direct affiliation to the national body. we kept the name Victoria so that we could continue to serve in rural townships that weren't served by another YMCA, and the Y didn't remove. And if you're 6 hours, we're a small state, but if you're 6 or 8 hours drive from Melbourne, the capital city, you don't want to be run by an organisation called the Melbourne YMCA.
Yeah. I can absolutely understand that. There's a sense of community pride and sort of this is, who do those people in Melbourne think that they're, who do they think they are telling us that we can't do this? They're not from our community.
Draining our economy, taking money to this big smoke and blowing it off on expensive stuff.
Right. Hey, Peter, I've got a couple of folks that have chimed in here in the chat session. It's a quarter to the hour, and I don't know if would you be interested in fielding a couple of those questions?
Yes, but look, or we could keep talking until they get tired and go to sleep. But I'd love to answer some questions.
Well, let me see what we've got going here, and you'll have to excuse me as I may slide off camera a bit, but this is from Jan Pate, who is asking, how do you feel about how do you feel the change agents will impact your movement as well as the worldwide movement following World Council? Wow, thank you for that. It's how do you feel the change agents will impact your movement as well as the worldwide movement following World Council?
Great question, Jan. I kind of come back with a quip on that one. It's a good, serious question. I think the potential for profound influence from the change agents and the activities coming at the global level is sitting right in the palm of our hands. Wow. I think there's a real chance we will cease talking about ourselves as separate movements and just talk about ourselves as one movement. And if anyone's going to do it, is a group of really highly motivated, highly skilled young people dedicated to our collective cause. And in some ways, I think they're likely to turn to people who've kept geographic differences going for more than 100 years and say, what are you talking about? There is no geographic difference. Let's just get on and do what we need to do. There is cultural and local interpretation required, but let's get over these hierarchical structures and focus on the cause. So I'm really hopeful of that. The young people that are change agents from this area of the world, I think it's they've got huge potential, and they're learning so much from the cross-cultural engagement with, frankly, movements around the globe that are much more for social change and much more active in advocacy and social change than we have been. And the great gift I'm looking forward to from this World Council over the next 5 or 10 years is a sharing of a commitment to bringing about social change and equity across the globe, and balancing the focus on business models with and sustainability that boards tend to get focused on legitimately, and senior staff, and let's say, well, actually, let's just do this because it's good and it's the right thing to do, and that it's what the Y stands for.
Yep.
So I hope that answers a little, Jan, and I'd be interested in your opinion, but that's probably over a glass of a Yarra Valley Red up at Estes Park.
Well, that's great. Do you sense that there will be any resistance in the form of kind of resentment from the change agents in terms of the older guard?
Oh, absolutely. And those people, I would call those that resist this change numbskulls. Just get out of the way. If you're trying to protect your patch, your time has come. and that's all of us. If we're not open to being a contemporary movement, what are we? George Williams was contemporary for his time. We created basketball in response to the times. If I've learnt nothing else in my career with the Y, both voluntary and in professional life, it's that change is inevitable. We can either choose to change or die. And what I think the Y has done generally, brilliantly, is continue to change, evolve, and be contemporary. You don't stick around for 160 plus years if you don't. And short-termism doesn't come into this. There's a higher order for what we're doing, that we're searching for a better world, a better place. Yes, there's the short-term pieces of, well, I've got to earn enough money to survive or whatever, but let's get back to that principle of generosity. Let's be generous with our hearts. Let's be generous with our storytelling. Let's be generous with giving people getting out of the way and enabling people to have the opportunity.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. Let's so let me see here. How do you leverage? This is a new one on me, so some people here know more than I do. What a surprise!
What a surprise!
How do you leverage your ocean resources for programs? In other words, learn to swim, lifeguard certification, scuba, surfing, etc.
So how do we harness that? Was that?
Yeah, how do you leverage your ocean resources? Right.
Yeah. So Australia is, we've got 90% of the population that lives by the ocean.
Right.
So it was a desert country, so the ocean life, surfing, and all the things you're talking about there are very much a part of our culture. And for us, and I'm hearing emerging in China as well, the drownings are a tragedy. So the leverage we place on swim lessons and King Swim, the associated brand that we acquired recently.
Oh, right.
What we do is we provide two slightly different products in a market where you've got parents with different aspirations. Overall, we believe it's every child's deserves to swim. Excuse me.
Yep.
So this is our recent fundraising campaign. Every child deserves to swim.
Brilliant.
At Swimathon, and in Australia, it's a really important piece. If you're a young child, when baby boom was young, we had the Olympics in 1956 in Australia, and swimming pools were built everywhere. So hanging around at the pool on a Saturday afternoon on a stinking hot day was a rite of passage through teenager's childhood. Going to the beach and swimming is a rite of passage. So leveraging that, and with Kings in particular, with the competitive angle, Australia has always batted above its weight in competitive swimming in terms of the Ian Thorpes and others around the globe. So we tend to work on those areas to motivate people to learn to swim. We see every drowning as a tragedy, and in particular right now we're working specifically with new arrival communities, particularly those that are those moving into inland areas around lakes and rivers, where an understanding of being around the water is just not culturally understood. And so encouraging people to be safe around water is the YMCA way, and water safety and those sorts of things, and encouraging awareness around water and learning to swim potentially competitive is the King's angle on it. So between it, we spread the love, if you like.
Right, exactly. Well, I hope that answers
I hope that answers that.
I hope, yeah, exactly. Me too. We've got another visitor here, Jeff Ottaviano from
hello, Jeff.
California. He's got a a
All
tome.
your
He's got a tome here that he's written. So I have just I'm going to bend aside here and read this.
I'll write it down.
Let me see here. He's saying that he was impressed with the array of amazing public services needs that the Victoria Y addresses. You do this in a society where the state provides a significant social safety net. Talk more about, here it is, talk more about the role the volunteers play in your association today and how you have seen this change over your experience. So it's about the role of the volunteers in your association today and how you've seen their role change over your experience. With the backdrop, I guess, that the state of Victoria provides a lot of social services.
Thank you. And hi, Jeff. And you're drawing out all your contemporaries, aren't you? We've got all the Jeffs and all the people that I don't know if you got a trip to Australia, did you, all way back when? But we had a couple of people I met, and Philip Hare met, and we had a lot of you folk come and join us, and it taught us a lot. But back to the question. The state in Australia and Victoria has a lot of direct provision of services, and we tend to focus on gaps. It's fair to say at the moment we're on a retraction of services. So we've got a government that's seeing the role of the state getting involved with people's lives should become less.
Of course.
And their expenses and those sorts of things. So the safety net is diminishing, and there are policy changes that are affecting us right now, as they always do. In terms of the role of volunteers, we look at volunteering as the canary in the coal mine for social good. If volunteers, people are volunteering in the community, it's a nice place to live. That's the rule of thumb for us, and I know it is for you too. So we encourage volunteering as an indicator or as good in itself. So we've got volunteers engaged in a whole raft of levels and levels. Program volunteers, we tend to rely on program volunteers to do those things that could not be otherwise done, either economically or without other support. And what we get from those volunteers is an enthusiasm that eclipses professional staff every time. We've just come off last week. There was a camp for 65 young people, all with high needs. There was a 2-to-1 ratio of volunteers who gave a week.
2-to-1?
Yeah, 2-to-1, because these young people, these children have such high needs, behavioural or ability, massive contribution in that sort of setting. And every time, we call it the Connect Camp, every time that Connect Camp runs, the entire program is reimagined and rewritten.
Wow.
No two programs are the same. There is no repetition, and that's the creative process is the binding agent for those volunteers to get together and socialise and form social cohesion, and they love creating different things each time. We have our volunteers run another program called You Know Why, which targets specifically future staff leaders, and it's entirely run by our volunteers. And we've handed that over to them, and the group of volunteers continually refreshes itself. But that program, 75% of it is written every time, and it's about inspiring staff to feel volunteer-like in their creative capacity. And it's a wonderful program. And I could give dozens and dozens of examples of programmatic involvement. We have volunteers that actively go out and get, I think I mentioned before, identify school groups that come in to our prison system, and particularly young women, and play volleyball against young men, social time over soft drink afterward, and create socialisation experiences. We've got volunteers who choose to take on young men coming out of that prison system as potential apprentices and go through mentorship training and work through that. So on the individual level, there's some wonderful stories. We have high-profile volunteers who lend their name to those sorts of projects. And then, of course, you've got our governance volunteers. We've got a really proactive, high-performance board. About 8 years ago, the board of the time said, we're not the people to take YMCA Victoria to its next level, its potential. They looked at each other and literally said that, and went out and sought a whole new calibre of volunteers at the governance level.
Wow. And
it's been mind-blowing. You know, we've doubled our turnover since that time. Our safety record is amazing because of their expertise. So it's a really exciting time to work with governing volunteers that are the Media Pass chair calls it an activist board. They're in there, and they're in governance space. Don't get me wrong;
right.
It's all governance space, but you know it's just a wonderful thing. Like you, Jeff, it's great to work with people who know more than you know, and boy, do they know a lot. It's inspiring.
Well, that is awesome. You know what? Remember, I told you that we can't go any longer than 8 hours, and we've consumed our first hour. So I think in keeping to your schedule and everything, I would like to sort of bring us over to a close. I don't have any other lingering questions over here off to the distracting but very necessary chat room. So let me close with the closing piece, Peter, that you and I talked about, and that is, tell us a little bit about Peter Burns, the person, maybe Peter, the Peter Burns that maybe some of these folks don't know, that maybe your pets, maybe a special experience you had at a YMCA camp when you were a little kid, or whatever. Just a little highlight around your personal background.
Sure, and firstly, thank you to those that joined us today. It's wonderful to know that people are supporting you in the first instance and this concept, and it's wonderful to have some familiar names out there as well. It really is. I'm blessed to be part of the YMCA family. It's gorgeous. Well, I suppose that the fact that I am extremely tall and handsome, it's probably the thing to share. No, let me. You've taken me back, and I will. You've taken me back with that question to a piece that I hadn't thought about for a long time, but it's a really important part of my growth. At the age of 14, I was on a YMCA-sponsored trip to New Zealand, and it was amazing to go overseas, climb mountains, rappel down glaciers. It was an incredible experience. It was also quite challenging. I was away for Christmas Day, missing the traditions and all that sort of thing. The learning experience, though, came from a gentleman called Keith Williams, who's still with us, and a long-serving YMCA man. Keith was a youth worker through and through. I was the youngest in the group by 2 or 3 years, and I was told, and I accepted the role of being the recipient at the back of the bus of stolen goods from the others who they decided they had to steal some colourful rulers and snow globes, and they weren't going to pay for souvenirs. When Keith came to me and said, "Peter, have you got something to tell me?" I broke down and cried.
Oh,
The way he handled the second chance, the way he handled us working through that experience, and the way he counselled us as a group and individually to see how what we was doing was wrong, to accept responsibility for our own behaviours, to not bow to peer pressure. It was one of the most potent learning experiences of my life, and it regularly I draw upon it when I'm feeling a little bit cranky with someone, or something seems a little too hard and I want it to go away. It's inevitable that we all need second, third, and even fourth chances because we're innately good. And that experience, I think, of more than any other, guides me in my work and in my belief in the power of transformational experiences for young people. Genuinely immersing young people in circumstances where the learning will happen. We can't design everything, but the learning will happen if you've got the right combination of talented, cause-led, cause-driven people.
yeah.
So that's something that not many people would know about me.
Well, that's brilliant, Peter. Thank you so much for that. It strikes me. I call those kinds of things moments in time that you just never forget. You may not draw on them very often directly, but they're at the core of the spirit, mind, body there that's shaping that 14-year-old to turn into the person that you are today, and all along the way between, let's see, he's 14 to 28, so that's only been 14 years ago then.
That's right. It's fresh in my mind. And if anyone doesn't know me, I'm very short. I'm not tall. I wish I was.
Well, Peter, thank you so much. We have, I know we've consumed a little bit over an hour now, and I hope that the folks that joined us here today appreciated the live stream, and I hope that those that listen to it in the future also appreciate the opportunity to hear from a leader such as yourself and your willingness to share and encouraging others to do likewise. So that should wrap it up here. I'm going to wrap up the stream here, and you and I can just take care of a little bit of business. But thank you so much.
It's been a delight. Thank you so much. It's absolute delight.